On his 72nd birthday, Arthur Sterling reserved the table at the Crimson Room, the very place where he and his late wife had celebrated every milestone for decades. He simply wanted to feel close to her one last time. But when he arrived, he was refused entry. "Your daughter called, sir," the staff informed him. "She warned us you're unwell, confused, and that you might make a scene." Standing alone in the freezing Boston rain, Arthur began to question his own sanity until a single father stepped forward, and what the stranger said to him changed everything. The man held a large black umbrella over a little girl in a bright yellow raincoat. He looked to be in his early 30s with kind but tired eyes. The rain drummed heavily against the pavement around them. The stranger placed a hand gently on Arthur's shoulder. "I saw what happened in there," the man said softly. That was not right. Arthur stiffened and tried to maintain his dignity. He straightened his wet coat. "I am fine," Arthur replied, though his voice trembled from the cold. "It seems there has been a mistake." The man shook his head. "My daughter and I have a reservation. We would be honored if you joined us." Arthur looked at the man in surprise. He started to shake his head to refuse the offer. He did not want charity. He did not want to be a burden to strangers. Then the little girl in the yellow raincoat stepped closer. She looked up at Arthur with large hazel eyes that seemed to hold too much wisdom for her age. "It is your birthday," the little girl said firmly. "Daddy heard the man say so. And nobody should be alone on their birthday. That is a rule." Arthur looked down at her. Her sincerity pierced through his defense mechanisms. The cold rain was soaking through his clothes and chilling his bones. But this child offered a different kind of warmth. "I could not impose," Arthur whispered. "You are not imposing," the man said with a warm smile. "We are asking. Please." Arthur looked back at the restaurant windows. He saw the golden light inside. He looked back at the lonely street behind him. He made a choice. "Thank you," Arthur said. "I accept." The three of them walked toward the entrance. The heavy oak doors swung open. Warm air scented with rosemary and garlic rushed out to meet them. Gregory, the manager, stood by the podium. His jaw dropped when he saw Arthur return. "Mr. Sterling," Gregory stammered. "I am afraid I already explained the situation." The stranger stepped forward and his voice was firm. "Mr. Sterling is our guest. We have a reservation for 6:30. The name is O'Connor." Gregory looked from the stranger to Arthur. He could not refuse a paying customer with a valid reservation. He swallowed hard and nodded. "Right this way," Gregory said. They were led to a corner booth near the stone fireplace. It was the exact spot where Arthur used to sit with his late wife Eleanor. The fire crackled comfortably. Arthur slid into the leather seat and felt the chill begin to leave his body. "I am Liam O'Connor," the man said as he helped his daughter with her coat. "And this is Mia." "Arthur Sterling," he replied. He extended a hand across the table. Liam shook it firmly. The handshake was rough, like that of a man who worked with his hands. They ordered dinner. Liam ordered pasta for Mia and a steak for himself. Arthur ordered the salmon, just as he always did. As they waited for the food, the conversation flowed unexpectedly well. Arthur learned that Liam was a freelance architect and a web developer. He worked from home to take care of Mia. He spoke of his daughter with a fierce protectiveness that Arthur admired. "Is it just the two of you?" Arthur asked cautiously. Liam's smile faded slightly. "Yes. Mia's mother left when she was a baby. It has been just us for 7 years. Arthur nodded and felt a pang of sympathy. I understand loss. My wife Eleanor passed away 3 years ago. The house has been very quiet since then. That is sad, Mia said suddenly. She had been coloring on her placemat with crayons. But at least she is in heaven. Daddy says heaven is nice. Arthur smiled at the child. I hoped so, dear. The food arrived. As they ate, Mia chattered happily about her second-grade teacher and her favorite dinosaurs. She told a joke about a penguin that made no sense, but she laughed anyway. When she laughed, it happened. Mia threw her head back. Her nose crinkled. A deep dimple appeared on her left cheek. He stopped at a photograph of Vanessa. She was 7 years old in the picture. She was wearing a red dress and smiling at the camera. Arthur held the napkin next to the photograph. The resemblance was undeniable. The same nose. The same dark hair. The same single dimple on the left cheek. He sat back in his chair. Was he losing his mind? Vanessa had said he was confused. The restaurant manager had looked at him with pity. Maybe grief was making him imagine things. Maybe he wanted a family so badly that his mind was inventing one. He tossed and turned all night. Sleep would not come. The next morning, the doorbell rang. It was his neighbor Robert. Robert held a returned piece of mail. Good morning, Arthur, Robert said. This came to my box by mistake. Arthur took the envelope. Thank you, Robert. Robert lingered on the porch. He looked uncomfortable. Say, Arthur, Robert started. Is everything all right with you? Arthur frowned. I am quite fine. Why do you ask? Well, Robert scratched his head. Vanessa stopped by yesterday. She seemed very worried. She asked if I had seen you wandering around. She asked if you seemed forgetful lately. Arthur felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. She asked you that? Yes, Robert said. She said you were having episodes. I just wanted to check on you. I am fine, Robert, Arthur said firmly. Thank you for the mail. Arthur closed the door and leaned against it. His heart hammered in his chest. Vanessa was not just warning restaurants. She was planting seeds of doubt with the neighbors. She was building a narrative. Arthur marched to his study. He moved the painting of the Hudson River to the side. Behind it lay his wall safe. He spun the dial to the combination. The heavy door clicked open. He pulled out his file of financial statements. He always kept them organized by month. He flipped through the stack. January was there. February was there. But March, April, and May were gone. He went to his computer and logged into his bank account. His hands trembled as he typed the password. He scanned the transaction history. $200,000 had been transferred out in the last 3 months. The recipient was listed as Sterling Care Services. He had never heard of such a company. Arthur sat frozen. He was not losing his money. It was being stolen. Then he remembered the dinners. Vanessa had started bringing him homemade soup 3 times a week. She insisted he eat it all. She said it was good for his heart. But every time he ate it, he felt heavy and tired. He would sleep for 12 hours and wake up with a fog in his brain. He walked to the master bathroom. He opened the medicine cabinet. He pushed aside his blood pressure medication and his vitamins. In the back corner, tucked behind a box of bandages, was a small orange bottle. He picked it up. The label read lorazepam, 2 milligrams. Take 1 tablet as needed for anxiety. Arthur had never suffered from anxiety. He had never seen this bottle before. He looked at the prescribing doctor's name. Dr. Julian Thorne. He did not know a Dr. Thorne. He had seen Dr. Harrison for 20 years. Arthur gripped the sink to steady himself. The room seemed to spin. It was not dementia. It was not old age. His own daughter was drugging him. She was stealing his money. She was telling the world he was crazy. He looked at his reflection in the mirror. He looked old and tired. But his eyes were sharp. The fog was lifting. He walked back to his study and picked up the business card Liam had given him. He dialed the number. "Hello," a voice answered. "Liam," Arthur said. "This is Arthur Sterling. We need to talk." Arthur arrived at the small coffee shop 15 minutes early. He chose a table in the back corner. He sat facing the door. He clutched his phone in one hand and the bottle of pills in the other. Liam walked in a few minutes later. He looked tired but alert. He spotted Arthur and sat down across from him. "Is everything all right, Arthur?" Liam asked. "You sounded urgent on the phone." "Nothing is all right," Arthur said grimly. "But I need to ask you something first. It is about Mia's mother." Liam stiffened. He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. "What about her?" "You said she left 7 years ago," Arthur said. "You said she disappeared." "She did," Liam replied. "Her name was Veronica. At least that is what she told me. She said she was a student. We were together for 6 months. And then she left," Arthur said. 2 weeks after Mia was born," Liam said quietly. "She left a note on the kitchen counter. She said she was not ready. She said she had a life to get back to. I never saw her again." Arthur felt a sickness rising in his throat. 7 years ago. That was exactly when Vanessa had gone to Europe. She had told him she was taking a sabbatical to study art history. She had been gone for 9 months. Arthur unlocked his phone. His fingers felt numb. He opened his photo gallery. He found a picture of Vanessa from a recent company gala. She was wearing a silver dress and smiling her perfect cold smile. He slid the phone across the table. "Liam," Arthur said. "Look at this woman." Liam looked down at the screen. He stared at it for a long time. The color drained from his face. His hands began to shake. Coffee sloshed over the rim of his cup. "That is her," Liam whispered. "That is Veronica." "Are you sure?" Arthur asked. "Look closely." "I would know her anywhere," Liam said. His voice was raw. "That is the woman who left my baby. That is Mia's mother." Arthur closed his eyes. The truth settled over him like a heavy stone. "Her name is not Veronica," Arthur said. "Her name is Vanessa Sterling. She is my daughter." Liam looked up in horror. "Your daughter?" "Yes," Arthur said. "And that makes Mia my granddaughter." The silence between them was deafening. The noise of the coffee shop faded away. They were two men bound together by a betrayal they were just beginning to understand. "Why?" Liam asked. "Why would she lie? Why would she pretend to be someone else?" "Because she was protecting her inheritance," Arthur said bitterly. "She wanted to be the perfect heir to Sterling Industries. A child out of wedlock would have ruined her image. Or so she thought. Arthur reached into his pocket and pulled out the orange pill bottle. He slammed it onto the table. "She erased Mia to protect her future," Arthur said. "And now she is trying to erase me." Liam looked at the bottle. "What is that?" "Lorazepam," Arthur said. "She has been drugging me. She hired a fake doctor named Julian Thorne to say I am incompetent. She wants to put me in a home so she can control the company." Liam picked up the bottle. He examined the label. "Julian Thorne," Liam said. "I have heard that name. He was in the news a few years ago. He lost his medical license for fraud." "She picked a criminal to diagnose me," Arthur said. "She thought I was too old to notice. She thought I would just fade away." Arthur looked at Liam. The shock in Liam's eyes was turning into anger. "She abandoned my daughter," Liam said. "And now she is hurting you." "She wants everything," Arthur said. "But she made a mistake. She forgot that secrets have a way of coming out." Arthur leaned forward. His eyes were cold and sharp. The confused old man from the restaurant was gone. In his place was the businessman who had built an empire. "I am going to stop her, Liam," Arthur said. "But I cannot do it alone. I need your help. Are you with me?" Liam looked at the photo of Vanessa one last time. Then he looked at Arthur. "She hurt Mia," Liam said. "I am with you." Arthur and Liam sat in the sterile office of the FBI. Special Agent Miller sat across from them. He was a sharp man with graying hair who specialized in financial crimes against the elderly. Arthur laid the evidence on the metal table one piece at a time. The bank statements showed $200,000 missing. The bottle of pills prescribed by the discredited Julian Thorne. And finally the DNA test results proving Mia was his granddaughter. Agent Miller studied the pill bottle. "This is a controlled substance," Miller said. "Prescribing this without a license is a felony. Giving it to you without your knowledge is assault." "She is trying to make me look incompetent," Arthur said. "She wants power of attorney. She wants the company." "We have enough to investigate," Miller said. "But to make the charges stick, we need to catch her in the act. We need to record her coercing you. We need her to admit she knows what she is doing." Arthur nodded grimly. "I understand. I will give you what you need." That evening, technicians arrived at the Sterling estate. They installed tiny cameras in the bookshelves of the study. They placed a microphone inside the antique clock on the desk. Arthur sat in his leather armchair and waited. He had called Vanessa an hour ago. He told her he felt dizzy and confused. He told her he was ready to give up. He heard the front door open. "Dad," Vanessa called out. Her voice was smooth and practiced. Arthur slumped in his chair. He let his mouth hang open slightly. He made his hands tremble. Vanessa walked into the study. She was carrying a thermal container. She looked impeccable in her designer suit. She did not look like a worried daughter. She looked like a predator who had cornered its prey. "I am here, Dad," she said. She placed the container on the desk. "I brought your special soup. You need to eat." "I am so tired, Vanessa," Arthur whispered. "I cannot think straight." "That is because you are sick," Vanessa said. She poured the soup into a bowl. The steam rose up, carrying a faint chemical smell. "Dr. Thorne says your mind is failing. You need to rest. You need to let me take over." She slid a thick document across the mahogany desk. It sat right next to the poisoned soup. "What is this?" Arthur asked. He squinted at the papers. "It is just for your safety," Vanessa lied. "It gives me authority to pay your bills. It lets me put you somewhere safe where nurses can watch you 24 hours a day." "A home," Arthur said. Fear crept into his voice. This part was not acting. "A facility," Vanessa corrected. "The best one money can buy. Now drink your soup and sign the papers. Stop being difficult." Arthur looked at her. He looked for a trace of the little girl he had raised. He looked for the daughter Eleanor had loved so much. He saw nothing but cold ambition. "But the company," Arthur said. "I built it for the family." Vanessa let out a short, cruel laugh. "I am the family dad. I am the only one left. You are past your prime. You are an embarrassment. Just sign the papers and go to sleep." Arthur reached for the pen. His hand shook violently. He watched Vanessa's eyes. They were glued to the paper. She was hungry for it. "I feel very weak," Arthur mumbled. "Good," Vanessa said. "That means the medicine is working. Sign it." Arthur pressed the pen to the paper. He signed a shaky signature. Vanessa snatched the document away before the ink was dry. A triumphant smile broke across her face. Finally, she whispered, "It is mine." "What about the soup?" Arthur asked. "Finish it," Vanessa said coldly. "Dr. Thorne said the full dose will help you forget everything." She turned to leave. She did not even say goodbye. Arthur waited until he heard her car drive away. Then he sat up straight. The trembling in his hands stopped. He poured the soup into the potted plant in the corner. He looked directly into the camera hidden in the bookshelf. "Did you get that?" Arthur asked. Agent Miller's voice came through the tiny earpiece Arthur was wearing. "We got it all, Mr. Sterling. Every word." Arthur looked at the empty bowl. He felt a deep sorrow for the daughter he had lost. But he felt a fiercer resolve for the granddaughter he had found. The trap was set. Now it was time to close it. Vanessa sat in her penthouse office and stared at the signed document. It should have been a moment of triumph. But her private investigator called with disturbing news. He sent photographs to her phone. They showed Arthur sitting in a coffee shop with Liam. Vanessa felt the blood drain from her face. She recognized Liam immediately. And she knew that if Liam was talking to her father, then her secret was out. She realized the signed paper was useless if Arthur could prove he was sane. If he revealed he had a granddaughter, then her claim to the estate would be challenged. She needed leverage that Arthur could not ignore. She needed to stop them before they could destroy her. She grabbed her purse and keys. She had one card left to play. Vanessa drove to the elementary school. She walked into the main office with her head held high. She presented her identification and a copy of the birth certificate. She had listed herself as the mother on the document 7 years ago before she abandoned the baby. The secretary checked the records. The identification matched. The school had no custody order preventing the mother from picking up the child. Minutes later, Mia walked out of the classroom. She held her yellow backpack straps tightly. She looked confused when she saw the elegant woman standing there. Vanessa smiled her perfect fake smile. "Come with me, Mia," she said. "Your father asked me to pick you up." Mia hesitated, but Vanessa took her hand firmly. She led the child to her car before anyone could ask questions. Arthur was sitting with Agent Miller when his phone rang. It was Liam. He was screaming in panic. She took her Arthur. The school let her take Mia. Arthur felt his heart stop. He put the phone on speaker. Agent Miller signaled his team to start tracing the call. Who took her? Arthur asked. Her mother, Liam sobbed. Vanessa took her. Arthur's phone beeped with another incoming call. The caller ID showed Vanessa. He answered it with trembling hands. Where is my granddaughter? Arthur demanded. Vanessa's voice was ice cold. She is with her family, Dad. She is safe for now. But that depends on you. What do you want? Arthur asked. I want the transfer to be immediate, Vanessa said. No more games with doctors. No more waiting for courts. I want you to call the board of directors. Tell them you are retiring effective immediately. Tell them I am the sole CEO. And if I refuse? Arthur asked. There was a chilling pause on the line. Then Vanessa spoke the words that broke him. Then I take Mia to Europe. I have a private jet waiting at the airfield. You will never see her again. Liam will never see her again. You have until 10 tomorrow morning. I will come to the house with Mia. Have the lawyers ready. Do not call the police or she disappears forever. The line went dead. Agent Miller lowered his headset. We have a location on the phone, he said. She is at her apartment downtown. But we cannot storm in. Not if she has the child. It is a hostage situation now. Arthur looked at the blank screen of his phone. The game had changed. It was no longer about money or the company. It was about the life of a 7-year-old child. Arthur felt a cold rage settle in his chest. He stood up. He looked at Agent Miller. We do it her way, Arthur said. We set the stage for tomorrow. I will sign anything she wants. But when she walks into my house, she is never walking out again. The morning light filtered through the heavy curtains of the library. Agent Miller adjusted the tiny microphone taped to Arthur's chest. He hid the wire beneath Arthur's wool cardigan. Remember, Miller said. We need her to admit the blackmail. We need her to say she took the child against the father's will. Arthur nodded solemnly. Liam paced the floor in the back room where the monitors were set up. He looked ready to tear down the walls. He was a father on the edge of breaking. She is here, an agent announced over the radio. Liam froze and stared at the screen showing the driveway. A black sedan pulled up to the front steps. Vanessa stepped out. She looked impeccable in a sharp business suit. She opened the back door and pulled Mia out. Mia looked small and terrified. She was clutching a stuffed rabbit to her chest. Arthur sat in his leather chair and forced his hands to stop shaking. He looked at the portrait of his late wife for courage. The front door opened. Vanessa marched into the library. She did not let go of Mia's hand. Her grip looked painful. Grandpa, Mia whispered when she saw him. Her voice was trembling. Arthur felt his heart break. He wanted to run to her. Quiet, Vanessa hissed at the child. She pulled Mia back sharply. She looked at Arthur with pure disdain. I see you are ready, Vanessa said. She placed a thick stack of legal papers on the desk. The jet leaves in 2 hours, she said. Sign everything. The company. The house. The power of attorney. Do it now and I leave the girl here. Hesitate and she comes with me to Rome. Arthur looked at his daughter. He saw a stranger. "Why are you doing this?" Arthur asked. "She is your own flesh and blood." "She is a mistake," Vanessa spat. "She is a loose end. Just like you." Arthur picked up the pen slowly. "I will sign," Arthur said loudly for the microphone. "I am signing my company to you because you threatened to kidnap my granddaughter." "Call it what you want," Vanessa smiled cruelly. "Just sign the papers, old man." Arthur looked at Mia one last time. He touched the pen to the paper. But he did not sign his name. He looked up at Vanessa. "The rain has stopped, Vanessa," he said clearly. Vanessa frowned in confusion. "What are you talking about?" she asked. Suddenly the library doors burst open. FBI agents flooded into the room with weapons drawn. Federal agents, Miller shouted. "Step away from the child." Vanessa screamed and tried to pull Mia back. But Liam rushed in from the back room. He tore his daughter from Vanessa's grip. He held Mia tight and buried his face in her hair. Vanessa looked around wildly. She saw the agents. She saw her father standing tall. "It was a trap," she shrieked. "You tricked me." An officer grabbed her wrists and handcuffed her. "You are under arrest for kidnapping and extortion," Miller said. Vanessa struggled as they dragged her out. She looked at Arthur with eyes full of hate. "I hate you," she screamed. "I wish you had died instead of Mom." Arthur stood silent as his daughter was taken away. He walked over to Liam and Mia. The little girl was crying softly. Arthur placed a hand on her head. "You are safe now," he whispered. "It is over." The trial took place 3 months later in a crowded Boston courtroom. The evidence against Vanessa Sterling was overwhelming. Julian Thorne testified against her to reduce his own sentence. He admitted to writing fake prescriptions and falsifying medical records at Vanessa's request. The jury listened in stunned silence as the recording from the library was played. They heard Vanessa threaten to take a child away from her father. They heard the cold calculation in her voice as she demanded the company. Arthur sat in the front row with Liam. He did not look at his daughter when the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. Kidnapping. Extortion. Elder abuse. The judge sentenced her to 7 years in federal prison. Vanessa did not scream this time. She collapsed into her chair and covered her face with her hands. She finally realized that her ambition had cost her everything. Arthur left the courthouse with a heavy heart. There was no joy in this victory. He had saved his granddaughter, but he had lost his daughter to a prison cell. He returned to the empty estate and sat in the dark for a long time. He knew that justice had been served. But it tasted like ash in his mouth. 1 year later, Arthur drove to the correctional facility outside the city. He went through the security checkpoints and sat in the visitation room. Vanessa walked in wearing a gray uniform. She looked thin and tired. The arrogance was gone from her eyes. She sat down behind the glass partition and picked up the phone. "Why did you come?" she asked quietly. "Because I am still your father," Arthur said. "I have not given up on you, Vanessa." She looked down at her hands. "I tried to destroy you," she whispered. "I abandoned my own child. I do not deserve your pity." "You do not deserve pity," Arthur agreed. "But you deserve a chance to be better. You have a long road ahead of you. But you do not have to walk it alone if you truly want to change." He pulled a photograph from his pocket and held it against the glass. It was a picture of Mia. She was 8 years old now and smiling brightly in the garden. She was holding a puppy that Arthur had bought for her birthday. Vanessa stared at the photo. Tears spilled down her cheeks. She reached out and touched the glass where Mia's face was. "She looks happy," Vanessa said. "She is happy," Arthur replied. "Liam is a good father. And she knows she has a grandfather who loves her." "Does she know about me?" Vanessa asked. "She knows that people make mistakes," Arthur said. "We will tell her the rest when she is older. And when you are ready to be a mother." The guard signaled that the time was up. Vanessa wiped her eyes. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered. Arthur nodded and stood up. He walked out of the prison and into the bright sunlight. The air was fresh and clean. He got into his car and drove home. He had a birthday party to attend. And for the first time in years, he was not looking back at the past. He was driving toward the future. The sun was shining brightly on the driveway as Arthur arrived home. It was a stark contrast to the freezing rain of his birthday 1 year ago. The garden was filled with the smell of charcoal and grilled meat. Liam stood by the grill and flicked burgers with a cheerful smile. He wore a silly apron that Mia had bought for him. Mia was running across the green lawn with a golden retriever puppy chasing her heels. She laughed and the sound was like music to Arthur's ears. "Grandpa is here," Mia shouted joyfully. She abandoned the puppy and ran toward him. Arthur knelt down on the grass and opened his arms wide. She collided with him in a warm and enthusiastic hug. "Happy birthday, Grandpa," she said, beaming. Arthur held her tight for a long moment. He looked over her shoulder at his large estate. It was no longer a cold museum of painful memories. It was alive again. It was messy and loud and full of love. Liam walked over and handed Arthur a cold drink. "Happy 73rd birthday, Arthur," he said warmly. "How was the visit with Vanessa?" "It was difficult," Arthur admitted as he stood up. "But it was necessary. Healing takes time, but we have started." "We saved a plate for you," Liam said. "Mia made the potato salad herself. I cannot promise it is edible." Mia giggled and covered her mouth. "I put extra pickles in it," she confessed. Arthur laughed and patted her cheek. "That sounds perfect to me." They sat together at the patio table under the large oak tree. They ate and shared stories until the sun began to set. Golden light cast long shadows across the grass. Arthur looked at his family. He thought about the man he had been a year ago. He had been lonely and bitter and waiting for the end. He had almost lost everything because of pride and blindness. But a single act of kindness from a stranger in the rain had saved him. He looked at the empty chair at the end of the table. He imagined his late wife Eleanor sitting there. He knew she would be proud of him today. She would not be proud of the company he built or the money he made. She would be proud of the family he had fought to keep together. Mia climbed onto his lap as the first stars began to appear in the twilight sky. "Did you get everything you wanted for your birthday?" she asked sleepily. Arthur looked at the little girl who had given him a second chance at life. He looked at Liam, who had become the son he never had. "Yes, Mia," Arthur whispered softly. "I have everything I need." Arthur realized that life is not about the tables we reserve in fancy restaurants. It is about who stands beside us when the storm comes. It is about the courage to forgive and the strength to start over. Arthur Sterling had built an empire of steel and glass. But sitting there in the quiet evening, he knew his greatest legacy was right here in his arms. For the first time in a very long time, his heart was completely full. 2 weeks after the birthday celebration, Arthur stood in his executive office at Sterling Industries for the final time. The view of the Boston skyline was breathtaking from the 50th floor. For 40 years this view had defined his existence. It represented power and status and the empire he had built from nothing. But today the glass and steel towers looked cold and distant. Arthur looked down at the documents arranged neatly on his mahogany desk. They were not documents of surrender like the ones Vanessa had tried to force him to sign. They were documents of liberation. He was voluntarily stepping down as chairman. He was handing control of the daily operations to a board of directors he trusted. Liam sat quietly on the leather sofa in the corner. He looked slightly out of place in a sterile corporate environment. "Are you sure about this, Arthur?" Liam asked. "You spend your whole life building this place. Walking away is a big step." Arthur picked up his fountain pen. It was the same pen Eleanor had given him when the company went public decades ago. "I built a company," Arthur said softly. "But I forgot to build a home. I spent so much time chasing success that I lost sight of the people who mattered. Vanessa was a victim of my ambition just as much as she was a victim of her own greed. I cannot change the past, Liam. But I can change the future." He signed the papers with a steady hand. With each signature he felt a heavy weight lifting from his shoulders. He was also establishing the Mia O'Connor Trust. It was an ironclad fund that ensured his granddaughter would never have to worry about money. She would have the freedom to be whoever she wanted to be. He also signed one final document. It was a small trust for Vanessa. It would only become available after she completed her sentence and a mandatory rehabilitation program. It was not a fortune. It was enough for a modest fresh start. It was his final act of parenting. He hoped that one day she would understand it was an act of love and not punishment. Arthur capped the pen and placed it in his pocket. "It is done," he said. He stood up and picked up his coat. He took one last look around the office. He saw the ghosts of his past in the room. He saw the late nights and the missed dinners. He saw the lonely holidays. He turned his back on them. "Ready to go?" Liam asked as he stood up. "Yes," Arthur replied. "Let us go pick up Mia from school. I promised her we would go to the aquarium." They walked out of the office together. Arthur nodded to his secretary, who was tearing up. He walked to the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. As the doors slid shut, he did not look back at the Sterling Industries logo on the wall. Arthur Sterling was no longer a CEO. He was no longer a titan of industry. He was just a grandfather. And as the elevator descended toward the street where life was waiting for him, he knew it was the most important title he had ever held. The rain had stopped a long time ago. Now there was only the road ahead. The blue light of the aquarium tanks illuminated Mia's face as she pressed her hands against the glass. She watched the jellyfish drift in the silent water with wide, fascinated eyes. Arthur stood beside her and watched the reflection of his granddaughter rather than the sea creatures. It had been 3 hours since he left his office forever, and he had not checked his watch a single time. Liam stood a few feet away taking pictures of them with his phone. "Grandpa, look at this one," Mia whispered, pointing to a small jellyfish trailing behind the others. "It is all alone." "It is not alone, sweetheart," Arthur said, gently placing a hand on her shoulder. "It is just finding its own path. But the others are waiting for it. See how they slow down." Mia watched as the larger group of jellyfish seemed to pause until the smaller one caught up. She smiled and the dimple on her cheek appeared. "They are a family," she said. "Like us." "Yes," Arthur said, his throat tight. "Just like us." They spent the rest of the afternoon wandering through the exhibits. They ate ice cream on the pier while watching the boats bob in the harbor. The wind was brisk, but the sun was warm. Arthur realized he had missed moments like this for decades. He had traded them for board meetings and stock prices. He had traded them for a cold, empty house. But he had been given a second chance that he did not deserve. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Liam drove them back to the estate. Mia fell asleep in the back seat, clutching her stuffed shark from the gift shop. Arthur looked out the window at the passing city. He thought about the man who had stood in the rain outside the Crimson Room. That man had been broken and hollow. That man had believed his life was over. He looked at Liam in the driver's seat. "Thank you," Arthur said quietly so he would not wake the child. "For what?" Liam asked, keeping his eyes on the road. "For stepping forward," Arthur said. "For not walking past an old man standing alone in the rain. You could have ignored me. You could have minded your own business. But you chose kindness." Liam smiled in the rearview mirror. "It was not just kindness, Arthur. It was instinct. We recognized a part of our family even before we knew who you were." The car pulled into the driveway of the Sterling estate. The house lights were on, warm and inviting against the dusk. It was no longer a fortress of solitude. It was a home waiting for its family to return. Arthur helped carry the sleeping Mia inside. He tucked her into her bed in the yellow room he had decorated for her. He went downstairs to his study one last time. He sat at his desk, but not to work. He pulled out a fresh sheet of stationery. He began to write a letter to Vanessa. He would send it to her in prison tomorrow. It would not be a letter of judgment. It would be a letter of hope. He would tell her about the aquarium. He would tell her about the jellyfish finding their way back to the group. Arthur Sterling put down his pen and looked out the window. It had started to rain again. A gentle spring shower that nourished the garden. He no longer feared the rain. He knew that after every storm the sun would return. He turned off the desk lamp and walked out of the study, leaving the door wide open behind him. He walked toward the living room where Liam was waiting. The story of his loneliness had ended. The story of his legacy had just begun. Arthur visited the construction site on a crisp Tuesday morning a few weeks later. The frame of the new building stood tall against the blue sky. It was a community center for families in need. This was the first major project Liam had designed since expanding his architecture firm. Arthur walked through the mud in his boots and did not care about the dirt. He found Liam directing a crew of workers near the main entrance. Liam spotted him and waved with a wide smile. "You are early," Arthur said Liam as he wiped sweat from his forehead. "The inspection is not until noon." "I am not here as an investor," Arthur replied warmly. "I am here as a father. I wanted to see what you are building." Liam handed him a spare hard hat. Arthur put it on and looked up at the wooden beams. The structure was solid and open and filled with light. It was the opposite of the cold glass towers Arthur had built his entire life. "It has good bones," Arthur observed. "It will stand for a long time." "I wanted to last," Liam said. "I want Mia to bring her own children here someday." They walked to a quiet corner away from the noise of the saws and hammers. Arthur reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I got a response yesterday," Arthur said quietly. "From Vanessa." Liam stiffened slightly. The mention of her name still caused him pain. "What did she say?" Liam asked. Arthur unfolded the letter. Her handwriting was shaky. "She thanked me for the letter I sent. She asked about Mia. She said she is working in the prison library. She is teaching other inmates how to read. Liam looked at the ground. That is good, he said. It is a start. She also said she is sorry, Arthur added. She said she finally understands why I chose you and Mia. She realized that family is not about bloodlines or inheritance. It is about who shows up. Liam looked at the unfinished building around them. She is right, Liam said. You showed up for us, Arthur. You changed our lives. Arthur shook his head. You saved me first, Liam. You gave me a reason to wake up in the morning. Arthur handed Liam another envelope. This one was thick and sealed with the Sterling crest. What is this? Liam asked. It is a deed, Arthur said. For the plot of land next to the estate. It connects to the main garden. Liam stared at him in shock. Arthur, you cannot do that. That land is worth a fortune. I do not want a fortune, Arthur said firmly. I want my family. I want you to build your house there. I want you to design it exactly how you want. I want to look out my window and see Mia playing in the yard. Liam held the envelope tightly. His eyes were bright with emotion. He did not try to return it this time. He understood now that this was not charity. It was love. We will break ground in the spring, Liam said. Arthur smiled and clapped him on the shoulder. I was hoping you would say that. Now show me where the library goes in this center. I have some ideas about the lighting. They walked back toward the construction crew together. Two men from different worlds who had built a bridge between them. They were no longer strangers in the rain. They were the architects of a new future. The leaves on the great oak tree turned gold and crimson as autumn arrived in Boston. The construction crew broke ground on the plot of land Arthur had gifted to Liam. The noise of machinery was a welcome change from the heavy silence that used to fill the estate. Arthur spent his mornings watching the foundation of his family's future being poured into the earth. One rainy afternoon, Arthur found Mia in the music room. She was standing in front of the grand piano that had been silent for 3 years. She pressed a single key and jumped back when a note echoed through the high ceiling. Did Grandma play this? She asked when she saw Arthur standing in the doorway. Arthur walked over and sat on the velvet bench. He ran his hand over the polished wood. She played beautifully, Arthur said softly. She loved the sound of the piano on rainy days. Can you play? Mia asked. My fingers are a bit stiff, Arthur admitted. But I remember a few things. He patted the empty space on the bench next to him. Mia climbed up and swung her legs. Arthur placed his wrinkled hands on the keys. He played a simple melody that Eleanor used to love. It was a lullaby she had played for Vanessa when she was a baby. Mia watched his hands with intense focus. Teach me, she whispered. Arthur guided her small fingers over the ivory keys. She was a quick learner. Within an hour they were playing a clumsy but cheerful duet. The house felt warm and alive. That evening Liam joined them for dinner. The kitchen smelled of roasted chicken and rosemary. They sat at the long dining table that used to feel like a canyon separating people. Now it felt intimate and full. Thanksgiving is next week, Liam mentioned as he served the vegetables. It will be our first one in the new house. Arthur paused with his fork halfway to his mouth. Thanksgiving had been the hardest holiday after Eleanor died. It was a day of empty chairs and painful memories. He had spent the last 2 years eating a sandwich alone in his study. We should make a big turkey, Mia declared. And pumpkin pie. We will make everything, Liam promised. We have a lot to celebrate this year. Arthur looked at the rain tapping against the window pane. It was no longer a sound of loneliness. It was the rhythm of a life being rebuilt. He realized he was actually looking forward to the holidays for the first time in years. "I have the old family recipes," Arthur said. "Eleanor wrote them all down. We can use them." Liam smiled. "That would be perfect." Arthur looked at his granddaughter and her father. He realized that the table was not just full of food. It was full of hope. The season of gratitude had finally returned to the Sterling estate. Thanksgiving morning filled the house with the rich aroma of roasted sage and thyme. Arthur stood at the kitchen island wearing an old apron that had belonged to his wife. He stirred the gravy carefully while Liam mashed the potatoes with vigorous energy. Mia was in charge of the table setting, and she took her job very seriously. She folded the linen napkins into shapes that vaguely resembled swans. Arthur watched them work and felt a lump form in his throat. For 3 years the kitchen had been a silent place where simple meals were eaten quickly and alone. Now it was loud with laughter and the clatter of heavy pots and pans. They sat down at the dining table as the afternoon light faded into a purple dusk. The golden turkey sat in the center of the table surrounded by steaming bowls of stuffing and cranberry sauce. Arthur poured sparkling cider for Mia and red wine for Liam and himself. He stood up to propose a toast. He looked at the empty chair at the head of the table where Eleanor used to sit. He did not feel the crushing weight of grief today. He felt a gentle gratitude for the time he had with her and for the people sitting before him now. "I am thankful for the rain," Arthur said, raising his glass. Liam and Mia looked at him with understanding smiles. "Because without the rain I never would have found the people who brought the sun back into my life." "To family," Liam added, raising his glass high. "To family," Arthur repeated. They clinked their glasses and the sound rang out clear and bright in the warm room. Arthur took the first bite of the meal Eleanor had invented decades ago. It tasted like memory and it tasted like hope. He looked at his granddaughter wiping pumpkin pie off her face with a happy grin. He knew that this was not just a holiday. It was the beginning of a new tradition that would outlive him. Winter brought heavy snow to Boston that year. But inside the Sterling estate the fireplaces burned bright and constant. The months passed quickly, marked by piano lessons and shared dinners. When the snow finally melted, it revealed the green shoots of crocuses in the garden. It also revealed the completed frame of Liam and Mia's new home just across the lawn. Arthur stood on his back porch with a mug of hot coffee. He watched the moving van pull into the driveway next door. It was not a large truck because Liam and Mia did not have many possessions. They had traveled light for 7 years. But now they were putting down roots. Mia ran across the wet grass that connected their 2 properties. She was wearing muddy rain boots and a bright pink jacket. "Grandpa," she shouted as she waved a small box. "This is my room stuff." Arthur chuckled and waved back. He walked down the stone path to meet her. He had hired a landscaper to build a walkway connecting the 2 houses. He called it the bridge. It meant that his family was never more than a minute away. Liam walked out of the new front door. He looked tired but proud. The house was modern and filled with windows. It was a perfect contrast to Arthur's traditional stone mansion. "We are officially neighbors," Arthur, Liam said with a grin. "We have been neighbors in spirit for a long time," Arthur replied. "But I admit I like this arrangement better." "I have something for you," Liam said. He handed Arthur a set of keys. "What is this for?" Arthur asked. "It is a key to our front door," Liam said seriously. "You do not knock, Arthur. You just come in. That is the rule." Arthur held the cool metal in his hand. He thought about the locks he had put on his heart after Eleanor died. He thought about the gates he had built to keep the world out. Now he held the key to a future he never expected. "I will use it," Arthur promised. "Hand. Come see my room, Grandpa," she insisted. "It has a window seat just for reading." Arthur let himself be pulled toward the new house. He stepped over the threshold and felt a sense of peace settle deep in his bones. He was 74 years old. Most men his age were slowing down. But Arthur Sterling felt like his life was just beginning again. The summer breeze blew gently through the garden connecting the two estates. It was Arthur's 73rd birthday. But this year there was no reservation at the Crimson Room. There were no cold shoulders or lonely tables. Instead, the air was filled with the smell of charcoal smoke and sweet barbecue sauce. Liam stood at the large grill wearing a novelty apron that said Grill Master. He was flipping burgers with a joyful lack of skill while Mia ran circles around him with the golden retriever. Arthur sat in his favorite lawn chair with a cold lemonade in his hand. The sun was warm on his face. He closed his eyes for a moment and remembered the freezing rain of exactly 1 year ago. He remembered the despair that had almost drowned him standing outside that restaurant. It felt like a lifetime ago. It felt like a story that happened to someone else. He opened his eyes and looked at the scene before him. He saw the path connecting his large stone house to the modern glass home of his family. He saw the flowers blooming where there used to be only manicured hedges. He saw a life that was messy and loud and imperfect. And it was beautiful. Mia saw him watching and abandoned the dog. She ran across the grass with her arms wide open. She threw herself into his lap with the force of a cannonball. "Happy birthday, Grandpa," she shouted into his shirt. Arthur wrapped his arms around her small frame. "Thank you, my dear," he said. "We made you a cake," she whispered conspiratorially. "Daddy burned the edges a little bit. But we covered it with extra frosting so you cannot tell." "I love burnt edges," Arthur promised her. "And I love extra frosting." Liam walked over with a platter of food. He set it down on a patio table. He looked at Arthur with deep affection. "To another year," Liam said, raising his bottle of water. "And to many more after that." Arthur smiled. He looked up at the clear blue sky. He thought of Eleanor. He thought of Vanessa working in the prison library, finding her own way back to humanity. He thought of the stranger who had stepped forward in the rain. Legacy is not what we leave in bank accounts, Arthur realized. It is not the buildings that bear our names. Legacy is the people we catch when they fall. It is the doors we open when others close them. Arthur squeezed his granddaughter's hand. He took a deep breath of the summer air. The rain had stopped falling a long time ago. "I am ready for cake," Arthur said. And as Mia laughed and pulled him toward the table, Arthur Sterling knew he was finally home. The end. For years passed slowly but meaningfully. The seasons cycled through the garden and marked the passage of time with falling leaves and blooming flowers. Mia grew taller and her drawings became more detailed. Liam built his architecture firm into a respected name in Boston. And Arthur waited. He stood outside the heavy gray gates of the correctional facility on a cloudy Tuesday morning. His hair was completely white now, but his back was straight. He checked his watch. It was 10 o'clock. The metal gates buzzed and clicked loudly. A small door opened. Vanessa stepped out. She was carrying a single plastic bag with her personal belongings. She wore simple jeans and a white sweater that Arthur had sent her. She blinked against the harsh light of freedom. She looked older. The sharp angles of her face had softened with humility. She saw Arthur standing by the car. She stopped. She looked unsure of her welcome despite the hundreds of letters they had exchanged. Arthur did not hesitate. He walked forward and closed the distance between them. "Hello, Vanessa," he said softly. "Dad," she whispered. Her voice cracked. "You came." "I told you I would," Arthur said. "I told you I would not give up." He opened the car door for her. She slid into the passenger seat of the sedan. It was not a limousine. It was a family car. She ran her hand over the dashboard as if checking that it was real. "How is she?" Vanessa asked as they pulled onto the highway. "How is Mia?" "She is 11 now," Arthur said. "She is in middle school. She plays the piano better than I ever did. And she is waiting for you." Vanessa turned to look at him. Panic flickered in her eyes. "Is she angry? Does she hate me?" "She is nervous," Arthur admitted honestly. "She has questions. But she has a big heart. She gets that from her father." They drove in silence for a while. The skyline of Boston appeared in the distance. It was the city Vanessa had once tried to conquer. Now she just wanted to find a place within it. "I am scared, Dad," Vanessa confessed. "I did not know how to be a mother. I did not know how to be a daughter." Arthur reached over and patted her hand. "We do not expect you to be perfect, Vanessa. We just expect you to try. We will figure the rest out together. One day at a time." The car turned into the driveway of the estate. The trees had grown taller. The bridge connecting the two houses was covered in ivy. Liam and Mia stood on the front porch. Mia looked tall and lanky. She clutched the railing tightly. Vanessa stepped out of the car. She stood frozen at the bottom of the steps. She looked at the child she had abandoned. She looked at the man she had betrayed. Liam nodded to her. It was a nod of cautious welcome. Mia took a step down. Then another. She stopped a few feet away from Vanessa. She studied her mother's face. She looked for the resemblance that Arthur had seen so many years ago. "Hi," Mia said shyly. "Hi, Mia," Vanessa choked out. Tears streamed down her face. "You are so beautiful." "Grandpa said you are sorry," Mia said. "He said you want to fix things." "I do," Vanessa sobbed. "I want to fix everything. If you will let me." Mia looked at Arthur. He gave her a small encouraging nod. Mia looked back at Vanessa. She took a brave step forward and offered a small hesitant smile. "You can come in," Mia said. We made lunch. Arthur watched them walk up the steps. It was a fragile beginning. It would take years to rebuild the trust that was broken. But as he followed them into the house, he knew that the cycle of pain had finally been broken. The rain had washed away the past. And inside the house, the future was waiting to be written. The reintegration of Vanessa into the family was not a fairy tale. It was hard work that required patience from everyone. She lived in the guest cottage at the edge of the estate. She did not assume she could walk back into the main house or into their hearts immediately. She found a job at the community center Liam had designed. She organized files and swept floors and helped families who were struggling. She learned the value of earning her place in the world. Arthur watched this slow transformation with quiet pride. He saw his daughter wake up early every morning to catch the bus because she refused to take the car he offered. He saw her working in the garden with dirt under her fingernails. The cold and ambitious executive was gone. In her place was a woman trying to forgive herself. One warm evening in late August, Arthur sat on the back porch. The sun was setting and casting a golden glow over the lawn. Liam and Mia were sitting at the patio table with Vanessa. They were working on a science project for Mia's school. It was a model of the solar system made of styrofoam balls and paint. "Pass me the Saturn, please," Vanessa said. She held a paintbrush poised over a yellow sphere. Mia handed it to her. "You have to paint the ring silver," Mia instructed seriously. "I will do my best," Vanessa promised. She painted with a steady hand and intense concentration. Liam watched them from across the table. For a long time, Arthur had worried about how Liam would handle this. Liam had every right to be angry forever. But Liam possessed a grace that Arthur admired. He had chosen peace for the sake of his daughter. "That looks pretty good actually," Liam said, looking at the planet. "You have a steady hand." Vanessa looked up and smiled. It was a genuine smile that reached her hazel eyes. "Thank you, Liam," she said softly. Arthur felt a lump in his throat. He realized he was holding his breath. He was witnessing a miracle. The three people who had been torn apart by lies and ambition were sitting together in peace. They were gluing planets together and rebuilding a universe that had shattered. Mia yawned and rubbed her eyes. "Is it time for bed?" she asked. "It is getting late," Liam agreed. "We can finish the rest tomorrow." Mia stood up and walked around the table. She hugged her father goodnight. Then she hesitated. She looked at Vanessa, who was cleaning the paintbrushes. Mia took a step forward. She wrapped her small arms around Vanessa's waist. "Good night, Vanessa," Mia said. Vanessa froze. She closed her eyes and Arthur saw a tear slip out. She hugged the child back very gently. "Good night, Mia," Vanessa whispered. "Sweet dreams." Arthur watched Liam and Mia walk back to their glass house across the lawn. Vanessa stayed at the table staring at the unfinished solar system. Arthur walked down the steps and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You are doing well," he said. She looked up at him. "She is amazing, Dad," Vanessa said. "She is so kind. I do not deserve her kindness." "None of us get what we deserve," Arthur said. "We get what we build. And you are building something beautiful." Vanessa stood up and wiped her eyes. "I will see you tomorrow, Dad." Arthur watched her walk to the guest cottage. The lights in both houses turned on one by one. He stood alone in the garden under the rising moon. He was an old man standing between two homes. But he did not feel divided. He felt like the bridge that connected them. The storm was truly over. And the legacy of rain was finally bringing forth life. The sun shone brightly on the garden 1 year later. It was Arthur's 73rd birthday. There was no freezing rain today. There were no lonely tables at a fancy restaurant. There was only the smell of grilled food and the sound of laughter filling the air. Liam stood by the grill flipping burgers with a smile. Vanessa walked out of the kitchen carrying a large chocolate cake with lit candles. She looked happy and healthy. Mia ran between them with the dog barking joyfully at her heels. Arthur sat in his favorite chair and watched them. He thought about the man he used to be. He had been a man who measured success in stock prices and skyscrapers. He had been a man who let pride build walls around his heart. He had almost lost everything that truly mattered. But he had been given a miracle. Mia ran over to him and climbed into his lap. "Make a wish, Grandpa," she whispered as Vanessa placed the cake on the table. Arthur looked at the flickering candles. He looked at his daughter who had found her way back to the light. He looked at Liam who had taught him the meaning of unconditional love. And he looked at his granddaughter who was the glue holding them all together. "I do not need to make a wish," Arthur said softly. "I already have everything I could ever want." He blew out the candles and the family cheered. Arthur Sterling realized that his legacy was not the company he built. His legacy was the love that sat around this table. He had learned that it is never too late to start over. He had learned that even the coldest winter eventually gives way to spring. This story reminds us that life is not defined by the mistakes we make. It is defined by the courage we have to fix them. Arthur thought his story was over at 70 years old. But a simple act of kindness from a stranger changed his destiny. It teaches us that we should never let pride stand in the way of forgiveness. It shows us that family is worth fighting for no matter how broken things may seem. We hope this story touched your heart and brought a tear to your eye. If you enjoyed this video, please support our channel. Press the subscribe button and like this video to help us grow. Share it with your friends and family so they can hear this message of hope too. We post new and exciting stories every single day. We want to know your thoughts on this story. Do you believe that everyone deserves a second chance like Vanessa? Have you ever had to forgive someone who hurt you deeply? Please share your story in the comments below. We love reading the feelings that come from deep within your heart. We wish all of you watching this video good health and happiness. May your life be filled with peace and joy every single day. Thank you for spending your time with us. Goodbye for now, and we will see you in the next video.